For years, the Premier League has tried to answer one question. How do you stop Vinícius Júnior? Arsenal are exploring one of the biggest transfers English football has ever seen. Not because they're desperate, not because they're rebuilding. They're already Premier League champions. They're already one of Europe's strongest teams. The interest exists because Mikel Arteta believes there's still another level this team can reach if the right opportunity presents itself. At first, it sounds almost impossible. Why would Real Madrid even consider letting one of the world's best wingers leave? And why would Vinícius trade the Bernabeu for the Premier League? Then you look a little deeper. A contract that still hasn't been resolved. An Arsenal project that keeps getting stronger. A club reportedly willing to break its own salary structure for a player it believes could change everything. Now, here's what I think most people are getting wrong. This story isn't really about whether Arsenal can afford Vinícius. It isn't even about whether the transfer actually happens. It's about something much bigger. What happens if the most explosive one-on-one winger in world football joins a team that has already figured out how to win the Premier League without him? Because the scary part isn't that Vinícius could come to England. The scary part is where he could end up. For years, Premier League defenders have only had to survive 90 minutes against him in Europe. Imagine having to do it twice every season, while also trying to stop Bukayo Saka on the opposite wing. And once you understand why Arsenal are even entertaining a move that once seemed impossible, you'll begin to understand why the Premier League may have a Vinícius Júnior problem before he's even kicked a ball in England.
A few weeks ago, the idea sounded ridiculous. Vinícius Júnior leaving Real Madrid for Arsenal. Most people laughed it off. After all, this is one of the faces of Real Madrid, a Champions League winner, one of the most feared wingers in world football, a player who has spent years destroying elite defenders on the biggest nights. Why would Madrid even think about letting him go? But then something changed, not on the pitch, at the negotiating table. Vinícius entered the final year of his contract without agreeing fresh terms. And suddenly, one of football's biggest certainties wasn't so certain anymore. Arsenal quickly emerged as one of the clubs monitoring the situation, although no club-to-club negotiations had taken place. Real Madrid, meanwhile, continued working towards a renewal and publicly remained confident they could keep him. Now, here's where I think the story becomes fascinating. This isn't really about Arsenal trying to steal Real Madrid's superstar. It's about timing. If a player of Vinícius's level ever becomes available, clubs don't ask whether they need him. They ask whether they can possibly make the deal happen. That's exactly why Arsenal have explored the possibility. Not because the transfer is easy, because opportunities like this almost never exist. But then, another question appeared. Even if Arsenal could somehow afford the transfer fee, could they afford everything that comes with Vinícius? His wages have been one of the biggest obstacles in the contract negotiations with Madrid. Reports suggest Arsenal would have to shatter their own salary structure to even compete financially, while Real Madrid continue trying to reach an agreement over a new deal. That alone should probably end the conversation. Except, Arteta hasn't ruled out making another major signing before the window closes. He has repeatedly spoken about improving the squad and increasing competition, because champions cannot afford to stand still while everyone else improves. And that's why this story refuses to disappear, which leads to an even scarier question. How exactly would anyone stop Arsenal?
There are fast players. There are skillful players. Then there's Vinícius Júnior. For years, defenders across Europe have known exactly what he wants to do. He wants the ball on the left. He wants to isolate one defender, and he wants a race. The frightening part is that everyone knows what's coming, yet very few actually stop it. What makes Vinícius different isn't just pace. Plenty of players are quick. It's the way he combines acceleration, balance, and confidence. Most wingers slow down before taking on a defender. Vinícius speeds up. That tiny difference completely changes how defenders react. Take one step too early, he goes outside. Show him the touchline, he cuts inside. Bring a second defender, space opens somewhere else. This is where I think most people underestimate him. People talk about his dribbling. I think his decision-making is even more dangerous. Over the last few seasons, he has evolved from an exciting winger into one of Europe's most productive attackers, adding goals, assists, and decisive contributions in the biggest matches, rather than relying only on flair. And imagine placing that player inside Arsenal's current system. Defenders already spend 90 minutes worrying about Bukayo Saka. Martin Odegaard constantly manipulates space between the lines. Declan Rice controls transitions. Kai Havertz stretches centre-backs. Now imagine every opponent also having to deal with Vinícius attacking from the opposite side. Who receives the second defender? Who gets left 1-against-1? Who gets doubled? Someone will always be free. And that's the scary part nobody is really talking about. This isn't simply adding another superstar, it's multiplying every problem Arsenal already create. Because if Saka attracts 2 defenders, Vinícius attacks the other side. If Vinícius is doubled, Saka suddenly has more space than almost any winger in England ever gets. The tactical equation stops making sense.
Here's the part that worries the rest of the Premier League. Vinícius doesn't need Arsenal. Arsenal don't need Vinícius. That's exactly why this story is so fascinating. If Arsenal were finishing 5th, desperately searching for a superstar to save them, this would make perfect sense. But they aren't. They're Premier League champions. They're coming off one of the best seasons in the club's modern history. They already have Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard, Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, and one of the deepest squads in England. Which means this isn't about fixing a weakness, it's about removing one of the very few limitations they still have. For all of Arsenal's success last season, there were still matches where opponents sat deep, crowded the middle, and forced Arteta's side into long periods of patient possession. Sometimes Arsenal still needed something different. Someone capable of turning one defender inside out without needing an elaborate passing move. That's exactly what Vinícius has built his career doing. And here's what most people miss. This isn't simply about putting Vinícius on the left and Saka on the right. It's about what happens to everyone else. Arsenal are not chasing Vinícius because they lack quality. They're exploring the possibility because elite teams keep asking the same question. How do we become impossible to prepare for? Arteta himself has made it clear that champions cannot stand still. He recently said Arsenal still expect more reinforcements because every successful team has to keep evolving while rivals improve around them. Arsenal have made inquiries, and one of the world's biggest players is entering the final year of his deal. Those facts are real. Everything beyond that remains uncertain. But uncertainty is exactly what makes the Premier League nervous, because football changes very quickly. One contract meeting, one disagreement, one unexpected decision, that's all it takes. And that's why the Premier League may already have a Vinícius Júnior problem. Not because he's wearing an Arsenal shirt, but because the possibility alone forces every rival to imagine a future where the champions become even harder to stop.